Hey listeners, welcome to Straight Wife Trans Life. I'm Lisa, and in this episode I bring back my spouse. She discusses how difficult it was to come out to her parents and her brother as a transgender woman, and the courage and time it took to make it happen. Without further ado, let's hear what happened. I'd like to welcome back my spouse today. Hello, spouse.
Hello.
Thanks for taking time to talk today. I'd like our listeners to hear about what the process of coming out to your parents as transgender was like for you as well as for us. This was probably one of the most difficult steps in the process of transitioning thus far, and there were several failed attempts. Why was it so difficult to reach a point where you were comfortable enough to tell your parents?
Well, I grew up in Mexico, and Mexico is a country that is a lot into machismo, and boys get told regularly they have to be a man, that they have to be strong. So I had a lot of expectations growing up put into me, a lot of societal pressure to be a man and like reasonably manly. And I didn't want to be the butt of the jokes either. I also had a lot of fear of losing my family, given what I saw around me, how people that were different being treated or made fun of. And really at the very top, it was a lifelong experience of hearing my dad being homophobic and transphobic regularly.
So growing up in this environment, you pretty much knew that coming out to your parents would be difficult. And I just want to sort of give people a background of your character because I find this very touching. Before you told them, you set your parents up with some resources that will help them with any mobility issues as they age. And that was touching because I know how much you love your parents, but that regardless, this transition is happening and whatever the outcome, you wanted to make sure that they were okay. And ever since we've met, you've always had a weekly call with your family. So I think it was also hard for you to know like that might be coming to an end. And it's not like your parents live next door. They are a 4.5-hour flight plus a bus ride, which takes a full day of travel to visit them. So it's not as simple as driving over or putting a forever stamp on a letter to share this news. So with all of this in mind, can you share how you thought you might want to tell your parents?
Well, I had, as I said, a lot of fear of coming out, so I thought maybe I can have a last hurrah trip where I spend time with them, and my gender is not an issue, and everything is as it has always been, and I seal that into my memory, and then I kiss them goodbye, and then bring out the secret. And that sounded great in my head, but the logistics started not working out when I talked about it, because if I go, when do I tell them? Do I tell them at the airport when I'm saying goodbye? Do I wait for a night of drinks with them and then like drop it there? Like, oh, by the way. And what happens after that? What if they have a horrible reaction? I usually stay with them at their home, or I had stayed every time I visited with them at their home. And like, there is a bad reaction. And then what do? Do I run out to the closest hotel? None of it worked out. So I had to move away from that idea and go with something more practical. I thought about a letter, and I never grew up reading letters. I thought they were kind of overly formal and was not warm enough. I thought about an email, which is basically the same thing, and the email didn't feel okay to me. And we had a regular video call, and I really wanted to tell them this face to face. I really wanted to be there for them. I thought they were not going to take it well, so I went with the video call.
Video call for the win. So I alluded to failed attempts at the beginning of the podcast. Can you talk about your failed attempts to make this video call happen?
Yes. Well, the first thing is that I really wanted it to be perfect, and I really wanted to have the courage to talk about this because it's not easy. So I tried calling from my office because after the pandemic, it's been pretty much empty. So I thought, I'm going to have basically a whole work day to find some time and get some courage and call them. And yeah, it didn't work. Didn't get the courage, or they weren't available. They weren't picking up. So I told my wife, maybe I just need to do it from home. So please leave with the kid. I'm going to call my parents this afternoon. And if they have a terrible reaction, I will probably cry and I will need time to put myself back together. Or if there is screaming, I didn't want our child to be present for it. So they gave me the time and space, and turns out I had no courage, so I failed every time miserably.
Did you have any techniques to build up your courage to call your parents?
Yes, one of the very, very first ones was try some liquid courage. And it didn't work out for me. I have been a drinker for a long time, so I had a few drinks and didn't do anything for me, and I actually just didn't feel okay. Then, after hearing for a very long time that marijuana helps you relax, I decided to go to this dispensary that is close to our home. It looks pretty nice. So I went in and I talked to the guy on the counter. Hey, I need something that helps me take the edge off to have a difficult conversation with my family. And he said immediately, of course, we have something for you. Pulled out some gummies and told me, take one or two, depending how you feel, about half an hour before. And so I did. And I just felt tired and kind of dizzy and didn't do anything for me. And then I remembered that I actually was already under treatment in the LGBTQ clinic. So I asked my doctor, I thought, this must be something common their patients have to deal with. And my doctor gave me a prescription of something that he said was really good for calming down, for like big interviews or things like that. This should be kind of the same deal. And he said, again, take one or two. And after trying it, I didn't feel anything in particular. So I asked, hey, can I try 3 or 4? And my doctor said, no, you really need some valor. This is just to help you. It's not magic. Mm-hmm. And then finally, talking to one of our therapists, she suggested to actually take care of my own mind. She explained something like our mind is divided in multiple parts, and one of them is kind of like a child that needs protection and panics really fast and doesn't want to be hurt or be exposed. And there's some other part of our mind that is the controlling, calculating adult part. And then I knew in that part of my mind that I had to do it, that it was going to be very important, and that I was going to move forward, whatever the outcome was. So I had to convince the child part of my mind that things were going to be okay. And I ended up taking an unexpected 3.5 hours hike where I figured out I could just do it there. And I really talked to myself and came to understand that this was going to be the way to go. It worked.
Right, but in the meantime, I was getting pretty upset that you couldn't just tell your parents already because I was stuck in a holding pattern. We had agreed that I wouldn't tell anyone, friends or family, until you told your family first. And I was at my wit's end at this point with all of these, false starts. Did my not so subtle frustration help push you to finally tell your parents, or what was it that finally did it?
Yes. So thinking back about that precise situation, we spent time together writing some guide that I later used to read out of. And then I was armed with that, and I was going to do it on 4th of July because we were going to have the whole day. And so we started having some drinks and talking about doing it, and you kept on pressing, and I kept on just putting it off until I felt I was inebriated enough, and I had convinced myself, and the fireworks started. I couldn't make the call. It was just noise. And you got really, really upset about it. I really let you down that day.
Yeah, I was not a happy camper. It didn't go well. We had a little bit of a discussion, a heated discussion, if you will.
Yes, and I was like really sad for the things you said, and I really felt I was letting you down and putting you through something you didn't deserve because you had just been so supportive other than the initial reaction. So I woke up next day 5 a.m, alone, went and made myself some coffee, went to my office and fired up the video call, expecting to find my parents having breakfast. And to my surprise, it was only my mom.
We're 2 hours behind your parents, so it was a little bit later where they live.
Yes. To my surprise, I just thought, I have to do this. I can't keep on dragging my wife and my life. So I just told my mom. I started just warming her up, and then I kind of read the thing we wrote on the background of the screen of the computer while looking at the camera, and that was it.
Well, I guess that wasn't really it. What did your mom say?
Yeah, that was it for telling her. My mom responded, "Oh, so you want to transition from male to female? You want to live your life as a woman?" I said, "Yes." She said, "And you have felt like this for 45 years?" I said, "Yes." She's like, "Why don't you just keep it for another 45 years?" And I said, "No, Mom, it doesn't work like that. I have kept this secret for too long." And then she said, "Okay, why don't you give me 5 years? Wait 5 years, and then you come out to everyone else." And I said, "Why 5 years after 45?" And she said, "I'm going to stop taking care of myself. In 5 years, I think I probably will be dead. You deal with your dad's response." And then I said, everything is going to be okay. I should just come out.
After that conversation with your mom, who did you tell next?
The next one I came out to was my brother. I found him driving, again on a video call. I found him driving his car.
We do not condone video calls while driving.
Yes, I told him, "Please stop. I need to tell you something important, and I don't want you to be driving." And then he stopped. I told him. He kind of didn't show much emotion. He just said, "Do whatever you think you want to do, but please don't tell Dad. He's going to have a heart attack."
Both your mom and your brother were afraid of your dad's reaction and not really concerned with how you felt. Did either of them kind of check in and see how you felt?
My brother so far hasn't said once, "How do you feel?" We had a conversation afterwards where it was mostly taking his feelings out on me. There was no question, "How do you feel? How have you kept this secret all this time? Like, I imagine this must be difficult." And those words never came out. And then after that, he basically hid from me. I would call him and he would not pick up. And then I would talk to somebody else and they would tell me, "Oh, I was just talking to your brother before." So
you know that he's around. He's just avoiding you. Not a great feeling.
yes, exactly. We grew up together. We're just the two of us, and he was my best friend growing up until that time. I never felt I needed that many friends on top of him, and now the relationship is pretty weak now.
After you're telling your mom and your brother it was time to tell your dad, how did that go?
Yeah, that was the next part of the adventure. That was actually the root cause of why this dragged for so long. After telling my mom, it took about 6 weeks for me to come out to my dad. My mom offered to help me, and she wanted me to set up things a certain way. And as the time passed, she never actually said, "Okay, let's do this day. Let's do it like this." I ended up saying, like, "Are you gonna help me?" And she said, "Actually, no." So I just did it on my own. I used kind of the same writing I had before, and the reaction was kind of strange. He just said, "Oh, well, that's not too bad. It doesn't have to be a problem between us." And I was happy. I was in absolute disbelief and so happy. And then my mom told me a couple of days later that he told her, "We're going to go visit by the end of the year. I am not going to see our child with female hairstyle, makeup, nails, clothes, like none of that. I am not going to be up for that." And then it sank that he didn't understand, or he just gave me the first reaction he thought he wanted me to hear. Honestly, I don't know. And after that, everything has been downhill.
Everything has been very negative. There have been some negative conversations, and there was there was a very nasty letter that was sent, which I read, but you didn't read.
Yes, thank you. I'm really sorry you had to go through that.
No, I'm glad that I saw it and you didn't. I think what surprises me most is that your dad has never once said, "This must be really difficult for you." There's been zero evidence of empathy. It's been very much, "How could you do this to our family?" Very much blaming you for this, like zero empathy.
Yeah, it has divulged into name calling, and I'm not up for that, so I just avoid it altogether.
I just want you to know that I am really proud of you for how far you have come. In the beginning, when you told your brother and your dad, and it was very negative, you had a hard time kind of coming to terms with it. And now I see that you are a much calmer person and a happier person. And it feels like you're kind of at peace. Would you say that you're at peace now that a few months have passed and you've had time to think about things differently or in a different way?
Kind of. I am at peace with not being insulted or called names or insulting my family. It hurts and it's difficult. This is what my nightmares were made out of when I had trouble coming out. And as I said, I grew up with my brother being my best friend up to a year ago. And that hurts. My parents have made every sacrifice they could to give me the best education I could, which has been my source of survival all this time. But there are limits. My family's sanity, my own mental health come first. So I am doing the best with what I have, and I think it's pretty okay.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that story with us today, and maybe I'll bring you back more times. But next time, I'd love to just talk about us and how we're doing a year and a half. It's over a year and a half now. How we're doing as we head towards the 2-year mark of you coming out. Until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.